Another fantastic weekend of college football is in the books. I won't waste any more time, so here is my top 25 after week 10 of the college football season. Moving back to my number 1 is Georgia. They took down number 12 Missouri 30-21. Now it was looking like Missouri might have Georgia on potential upset watch as this game was tied entering the half, and Missouri was looking good during the second half, but Georgia was able to pull away and ultimately won by 9 points. Carson Beck had another great game as he threw for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Another year, another long Georgia winning streak as they're actually looking like they can pull off the three-peat this year. Although Ohio State beat Rutgers by 19 points, this game was a lot closer than you may think. Entering the half, Rutgers actually had a 2-point lead over Ohio State. Then with 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Rutgers actually pulled within 5 points, but 2 touchdowns from Ohio State the rest of the way gave them this comfortable victory. Oh, and shout out to Travion Henderson because he's the reason Ohio State won this game. He rushed for 130 yards on the ground. He also led the team with 5 receptions and 80 receiving yards as well. Another week, another easy Michigan victory as they took down Purdue 41-13. JJ McCarthy threw for over 330 yards. Meanwhile on the ground, Blake Corum rushed for 3 touchdowns. Again, Michigan looks fantastic on both sides of the ball, but this is yet another week in which they play a team that honestly really sucks. Next week will be Michigan's first true test as they go on the road to take on Penn State. I got Oregon climbing inside my top 4 as they took down Cal 63-19. Bo Nix had one of the best games of his entire career as he threw for just under 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns while adding 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. It was another massive day from Oregon's offense as they scored 60 points and had 600 yards of total offense. They also held Cal to only 19 points and 16 first downs. I know it might be a bit of a hot take having the Ducks over Florida State and Washington, but at the moment, I think the Ducks are the 4th best team in the country. Florida State was struggling early on and they actually trailed 7-0 midway through the first half, but they managed to outscore Pittsburgh 24-0 the rest of the way en route to their 17-point victory. Jordan Travis threw for 360 yards and had a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown as well. It wasn't a pretty and convincing victory by any means, but Florida State is now 9-0. If you like watching defense, I apologize that you had to watch this game. Washington took down USC 52-42. Michael Penix Jr. threw for 250 yards and had 3 total touchdowns. But the MVP of the game was running back Dylan Johnson. He rushed for 250 yards with 4 rushing scores. It was one of the best games we've seen from a running back in all of college football this season. Defensively, we're just going to ignore what Washington did because I don't think we should go into it. Washington is now 9-0 on the season, but this now marks 3 consecutive games in which they were on upset watch against a lesser opponent. Alabama just continues to win as they took down number 14 LSU 42-28. Jalen Milroe had by far his best game of his collegiate career. He threw for over 200 yards, but did most of his damage on the ground. He rushed for over 150 yards and had 4 rushing scores. Overall for the Tide, they rushed for 6 touchdowns and had 300 yards on the ground. I have no idea how Texas escaped with the victory, but their playoff hopes stayed alive with a 3-point victory over number 23 Kansas State. It looked like Texas was about to lose as Kansas State was on the 5-yard line in overtime and had 1st and goal. But Texas's defense stepped up and they ended up securing the victory. Still, a win is a win, and Texas is now 8-1, and their playoff chances are still alive somehow. Speaking of staying alive, Ole Miss somehow won this game by 3 points over Texas A&M. After falling behind late, Ole Miss drove down the field and scored a touchdown, largely due to Quinshon Judkins. He led the team with 100 yards on the ground and had 3 rushing scores. Meanwhile, Jackson Dart threw for nearly 400 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Wide receiver Trey Harris caught 11 passes for over 200 yards. Ole Miss is now 8-1 on the season, and they're still technically alive to play in the SEC title game. Penn State played by far their best game of the season as they took down Maryland 51-15. I mean, seriously, I don't know where the hell this offense came from, but if this is the kind of Penn State we're going to see moving forward, who knows, maybe they can make a potential run in the Big Ten. Drew Aller had his best game of the year as he threw for 240 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, defensively, they held Maryland to only 15 points and just over 200 yards of total offense. Overall for the game, and this is something I've never seen before, Maryland had negative 49 rushing yards. Now that's largely because Talia Tagovailoa had negative 47 rushing yards, but Maryland's leading rusher was Billy Edwards Jr., who had 1 carry for 4 yards. I don't recall ever seeing a rushing attack so non-existent before. Louisville dominated from start to finish as they defeated Virginia Tech 34-3. Offensively, the Cardinals had nearly 400 yards of offense, but the defense is what the highlight of the game was. They held Virginia Tech to only 3 points, 12 first downs, and 140 total yards of offense. Before we get to the rest of my rankings, I'd like to share with you guys how you can win money and make the college football season even more exciting. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $500. Yep, they're giving you up to $500 of free money. I've had a lot of success recently with college football, including this past weekend, and you can do the exact same with Underdog Fantasy. So make sure to use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $500. You can also sign up using the link in my description as well. Tennessee had a scrimmage as they defeated Yukon 59-3. Joe Milton threw for 250 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Jalen Wright led the team with 113 yards as Tennessee rushed for nearly 300 yards as a team. Oklahoma State picked up the massive upset as they knocked off number 9 Oklahoma 27-24. Alan Bowman had himself quite the day as he threw for 350 yards. He also added a touchdown on the ground as well. Meanwhile, Ollie Gordon II continues his impressive stretch as he rushed for 150 yards with 2 rushing scores. Don't look now, but Oklahoma State is now tied for first in the Big 12 with a 5-1 conference record. Kansas went into Iowa State where they picked up the 7-point victory. Jason Bean threw for 300 yards with a passing touchdown, while Devin Neal rushed for 2 touchdowns on the ground. I just talked about Oklahoma State being alive for the Big 12 title game, but Kansas is just 1 game back and is tied for second in the Big 12 with a 4-2 conference record. Oregon State bounced back after last weekend's loss with a 7-point victory over Colorado. This was a game they controlled pretty much the entire way, although Colorado did make things interesting with under 2 minutes left as this became a 1-score game. DJ Uiagalelei threw for 220 yards with a passing touchdown while adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Damian Martinez continues to be one of the best running backs in the conference as he rushed for over 100 yards. Meanwhile, this Oregon State defense continues to be one of the more impressive ones in the entire country. They held Colorado to only 15 first downs and just 238 yards of offense. They also held the Buffaloes to -7 rushing yards for the entire game. Last week's loss really hurt Oregon State, but they're still only 1 game back of second place in the Pac-12. James Madison moved to 9-0 on the season with their 42-14 victory over Georgia State. Jordan McLeod had another great day as he threw for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. He also led the team in rushing yards with 100 yards on the ground and had 2 rushing scores as well. James Madison is one of a handful of teams that is still undefeated, and again, it is so freaking stupid that they can't play in a New Year's Six game. And they can't even play in their conference championship as well. This was a real back and forth game, but Fresno State picked up the 7-point victory over Boise State. Fresno State led the entire game, but Boise State kept hanging around and making this a 1-score game as both teams kept exchanging scores. Fresno State is now 8-1 on the season, and just like that, they're tied for the best record in the Mountain West. If Fresno State keeps winning, they have a potential chance of being the Group of 5 representative in a New Year's Six bowl game. Tulane won a close one over East Carolina as they won 13-10. It wasn't a great day for the offense as Michael Pratt only threw for 200 yards, but the defense stepped up and made plays when it mattered most. I mean, for the game, they held East Carolina to only 10 first downs and fewer than 200 yards of offense. Missouri really hung in there, but it wasn't enough as they fell on the road to Georgia by 9 points. I'll give the Tigers credit because this was a game it really looked like they had a chance of pulling off the victory, but Georgia was just too much for them. Brady Cook threw for 200 yards with a passing touchdown, while Cody Schrader rushed for over 100 yards with a rushing score. Missouri's been a great team this year, they just have a couple of close losses to some really good teams. Speaking of their chances being shot, Oklahoma dropped their 2nd consecutive game and fell out of playoff contention. They fell on the road to Oklahoma State by 3 points. Dillon Gabriel did all he could as he threw for nearly 350 yards and had a passing touchdown. Oklahoma's defense just couldn't stop Oklahoma State when it mattered most. After looking like they'd be a potential playoff team midway through the season, Oklahoma has now fallen out of playoff contention. They've also fallen out of Big 12 title contention as well. I really thought LSU was going to pull off this this upset, but they fell to Alabama by 14 points. Midway through the third quarter, LSU actually led by 7, but Alabama scored 3 unanswered touchdowns to pull away with the comfortable victory. Jaden Daniels did all he could as he threw for 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while rushing for 160 yards with a rushing score. Unfortunately, he was knocked out of the game with a concussion, and once that happened, LSU's chances were pretty much shot. Arizona continues to be the most surprising team in the Pac-12 this season as they knocked off number 19 UCLA by 17 points. This continues to be quite the stretch for Arizona, as that now makes 3 consecutive ranked victories. If you go back 5 games, that's 5 consecutive games in which they've been close against a ranked opponent as well. Noah Fifita continues to be the most surprising quarterback in the Pac-12 this season. He threw for 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, flipping things over to the defense, and the Wildcats held UCLA to only 10 points and 17 first downs. They also held the Bruins to only 270 yards of total offense. Don't look now, but Arizona is also only 1 game back of second place in the Pac-12. I can't believe what Utah did to my Sun Devils as they defeated them 55-3. I mean, this is a Utah team that I've talked about in recent weeks just not being one of the better teams in the Pac-12. I've also talked about Arizona State being a sneaky good 2-win team, and these last couple of weeks, they've been giving a lot of these top 25 teams a lot of hell. Yet somehow they lost by 52 points to Utah. But shout out to the Utes. Bryson Barnes threw 4 passing touchdowns with 160 yards. Meanwhile, as a team, the Utes rushed for 350 yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. Hey, crazier things have happened, and they're still alive in the Pac-12 title discussion. Liberty moved to 9-0 on the season with their 56-30 victory over Louisiana Tech. Caden Salter threw for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, Quentin Cooley added nearly 200 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. I know there's been a lot of Group of 5 teams we've been talking about this season, but Liberty has just been flying under the radar in their first season in Conference USA play. I mean, they're 9-0 and they're having one of the best seasons in program history. After a couple of really embarrassing losses, North Carolina was gifted a cupcake as they took on Campbell. Well, they defeated them 59-7. Drake May bounced back with 250 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the ground, Amari and Hampton rushed for 150 yards with 2 scores. It's still been a disappointing season for North Carolina considering those back-to-back losses they had, but this is still one of the better teams in the ACC and in all of college football. Well, those are my top 25 teams after week 10. Was there a team I had ranked too high or ranked too low? Or was there a team that didn't crack my top 25 that should have been in here? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.